Danny?
We are back.
It's nice. It's been a little bit.
Yeah, it's been over a week.
Yeah, I know. Like, it's been kind of unnatural. Like, we've been trying to, like, keep up with this, but
yeah,
it's a little tough trying to balance everything.
Yes, it is. But I think we've managed to get ourselves pumped up. Especially since the podcast has performed.
Yeah.
People are listening. People are reaching out. People are willing to talk. You know, they want to hear the stories. They want to tell their own stories. It's a good feeling. There's no judgment on this end. We're just kind of feeling out the story, listening to it, trying to understand it with you if we can. And hopefully, when we've done enough of these, we can start connecting you listeners together to help each other figure these things out, or maybe share information. Tonight, we're talking to a special guest. You've put this together?
Yeah.
Okay. J.Nathan Couch, who is the author of Goatman, Flesh or Folklore. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, Flesh or Folklore.
Okay. Released in 2014. He's a published author. He had a book previous to that, more of a paranormal ghost book.
Yeah.
2012 is when that one came out.
Yeah, that one was Washington County Paranormal, a Wisconsin legend trip.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know there's going to be folks out there that have read these two books, and there's going to be folks out there that recognize Jay, and that's great. We are not going to be doing the Spider-Man thing, though. We're not going to go into a long origin of Jay and tell his story. His basically his upcomings again on another podcast, which I'm sure he's probably a little tired of telling it himself.
Yeah.
But what we do want to do is get him in here and get his opinion on a few things, and then we'd like to hear some of his stories and some of the things that he's done, and maybe see if we can't trade some information with him. I think that would be really, really cool, and hopefully if there's anybody out there who's seen something similar to what Jay has to say, then maybe you'll hear something and it'll perk your ears up too, and we can all kind of keep going on this together. So
before we get into the night's guest, we would like to ask anybody out there that has an unexplained story, they've had like some kind of folklore or legend around their area, we would like to hear your stories. And if you're not comfortable coming on the podcast and doing an interview, just just type it out and send it to encounters@kyxfiles.com.
all right, so if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's give him a call.
Hello?
Nate, I'm James. Well, I go by Tyler. And Denny here.
Hey, how's it going, man? It's an honor to get to talk to you.
Good.
Yeah, we're actually like
Yeah,
you're our second author on this podcast right now, so I'm actually pretty stoked.
The most exciting one, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so far I'm really excited.
Oh, thank you.
I have to say, everywhere we've looked for research regarding the Goatman, everything points to you. That has to feel good. I mean, according to the internet, you are the authority.
I was sort of in the right place in the right time with that research. So yeah, it was a phenomenon that for some reason was kind of overlooked or not thought plentiful enough to, take a serious examination. And I was able to get that research done, and it ended up being the first book of its kind, which is pretty unique because
that's
the
impressive.
field of the paranormal and cryptozoology and unexplained mysteries. I mean, every topic has been covered so much by so many great experts. So it was a real, really amazing that I was able to get that book out there before anybody else.
Well, we're glad you did. How long did you research that book before you had it published?
It's been a few years now since it came in. I'm trying to recall. It was at least a couple of years because the rudimentary research began when I wrote my first book called Washington County Paranormal, which was about folklore and legends and hauntings in Washington County, Wisconsin, where I live. And I learned about Goatman doing that research, and that was the most fascinating thing in that book, I thought. So I wanted to know as much about it as I could. And much to my surprise, I actually found an eyewitness to the Wisconsin version of the creature that I could interview, because I never thought I'd find anybody who had actually saw this. I thought I would just get,
Yeah.
he said, she said, friend of a friend lore. And as soon as I talked to him and I got his story, where he actually saw this thing walking through the woods, he smelled it, described its smell, he heard it speaking in English, actually, which is, I think, the most amazing thing about the whole sighting. And that just made me passionate about it. Like, I had to know about how many versions of it there were. Was it just in Wisconsin? Was it in other parts of the country? How did it all fit together? And that's what Goatman, Flesh or Folklore, the second book, ended up being about. Just kind of taking all these regional versions of the creature and trying to put together an overview of the general phenomena.
Right, yeah. And I've noticed that as before we plan these little podcasts, we kind of go into a subject, and we're both really fascinated with cryptozoology and all the study of these folklores and such. And we were actually in the midst of researching for more follow-up to the Dogman episodes that we've been working on, and there's the Goatman right in the middle of this, and we're like, oh, well, there's something here. And here in Kentucky, we have our very own Goatman legend. So we thought, man.
Yeah, in the Midwest, there's a lot of satyr sightings, which is, of course, people say Goatman is a satyr or fawn.
Right.
And there's also a lot of Dogman or werewolf sightings in the Midwest, like Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin,
sure, yeah,
and some other states too. And Linda Godfrey, who's the expert on Dogman sightings, I'm sure you're familiar with her if you're putting together a podcast about that topic. She thinks that one might be that some of these satyrs might be misidentified dogmen. I kind of take the stance maybe some of these dogmen are misidentified goatmen.
Okay.
I mean, if you really think about it, they do have a lot of physical similarities. So
sure,
I don't know which it might be, or if it's neither A or B and it's something entirely different. But yeah, it is interesting that so many of these things, sightings of these two creatures occur not that far from each other here in the Midwest.
Well, yeah, it's always been unique to me, but ours, the one thing I hate, I didn't like about our Goatman lore down, it's called the Popelick monster. He they say that he lives by this trestle, and he coaxes you, and they say that they have
it's like telepathic.
Yeah, telepathic and stuff of that nature.
Yeah.
So in the lore around it changes from
person to person.
Person to person, and it's they say. So in your kind of research, what do you kind of think that these creatures are? Do you think these are just lost in time, or ours say that there was a farmer, he had a drought, he couldn't get his crop to grow.
That's where he made a deal with the devil.
Yeah, he made the deal with the devil. He said that he killed his goats, and then I guess how those stories go, the devil tricks him and he turns him into a goatman. And I always hear these goatmen having axes. Why do they have axes? Do they just, hey, let's just grab an axe?
Yeah.
Well, see, it's interesting that you told me the version you just told me, because I've never actually heard that. Because there's that's the great thing about these creatures is, I view the folklore around them as being separate from the sightings, because the folklore is completely unbelievable. I mean, the version you just told me sounds like a campfire story, and I've never heard that story. The stories that I had found in my research, one was he was an escaped circus creature who had these supernatural powers and caused a train wreck and escaped to live under the trestle.
Yeah.
And then another version was the much less family-friendly version where it's the mutant offspring of some farmer and his sheep.
Yeah. Okay. I've read that one.
That one. Of course, you guys probably know that the Popelick monster goes by Goatman and Sheepman, depending on who's talking about it.
Yeah, we've noticed that.
So the thing about the folklore is, and there's multiple stories surrounding these. They're all very far-fetched. Like, there's one version, I think it's the Beast of Billowhack out in Southern California, where his origin story is basically the same as Captain America's, except he's a goat man and not, Captain America. So, it's very obvious that stuff isn't true at all. There's like a grain of truth maybe in there, buried somewhere deep.
Right.
But as to what people were seeing, I think there's like a couple of possibilities.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the fact maybe it's a misidentified creature of some variety, as I mentioned earlier, when Godfrey thinks that a couple of the sightings in the Midwest might be, misidentified dogmen. Like one of the more famous versions of the creature, the Goatman of Bowie in Bowie, Maryland, which is now a suburb of Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Most of those sightings are thought to be Bigfoot sightings. And in the case of that particular creature, the vast majority of the sightings in Maryland do sound like a Bigfoot creature. They don't have any Goatman traits or anything like that.
Something that I mentioned earlier today when we were kind of prepping and talking about this. We've been excited to talk to you all day. I just hope you know that.
Okay. Thank you.
I read a story about it was another story that happened here in Kentucky about a farm, a family farm that was being basically harassed by what a lot of us believe was a Bigfoot. And one of the stories was, well, this thing was caught carrying off, goats. It was caught carrying off pigs. And then I started thinking, I mean, my imagination maybe ran wild, but couldn't we be seeing a Sasquatch that's made himself a goat helmet, a goat face mask? I don't know,
Yeah, I mean, well, there is some validity to that, at least as far as like the Maryland creature, because there's I feel terrible because I'm blanking on the name of the book. It's an amazing book written by Mark of Sassenach, who's the authority on the Goatman of Bowie. But that book has hundreds of sightings in it all around the Bowie, Maryland area, and they're all primarily Bigfoot type creatures. And when somebody says they saw a Goatman in that area, and every sighting describes a Bigfoot, maybe there's something to that. But the problem I have with attributing because Goatman is a problematic creature because he's so strange. There's nothing like him that ever existed in the fossil record. He has human-like intelligence. As I said earlier, the Wisconsin sighting that I first recorded for my book, that's got the whole ball rolling on my project, he spoke English, and that doesn't make any sense at all from a zoological standpoint. So when you try to, I kind of get the idea of people when I try to explain away Goatman to something slightly, I hate to refer to Bigfoot as mundane, because he's not, because it's an amazing creature, but when but it's zoologically possible.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is Bigfoot hasn't been proven to exist, so it doesn't satisfy me. And to backtrack a little bit, because the third possibility is what these things are, as opposed to a misidentified creature or something along those lines, is that they could be some sort of supernatural creature. And the problem with that, obviously, is supernatural creatures such as, other dimensional beings or demons or spirits. Those things haven't been proven to exist either. But the thing about Goatman is the versions of the sightings of the creature where someone stands up and says, I saw this, and it's a credible person.
Yeah.
And they have so much to lose by coming forward, because I think I mentioned in my book that, it's almost socially acceptable to say, I saw a UFO or Bigfoot or a plesiosaur or something like that, because they're so ingrained in pop culture. But when you say you saw Goatman, you open yourself up to a lot of ridicule.
Yeah, why would you basically bet your life on the story if you didn't have, skin in the game at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I get the idea that maybe some of them could be pranks, and people don't realize what can happen when the prank gets out of control.
Right.
But for the most part, there's a lot of sightings that don't fit a prank or don't match up with some misidentification. And these things, they always exhibit, when they're described as having some goat-like and human-like amalgamation of features, they always exhibit some sort of supernatural ability, something that really can't be explained. I mean, Bigfoot, he makes all these whistles and grunts. I mean, some of the eastern Bigfoot sightings are as problematic as Goatman in that they appear to be bulletproof or can teleport or something. But the classic Bigfoot sighting, he behaves like a primate would. But Goatman, sometimes he speaks English. Sometimes people hear him talking to them in their head, like you said. With the Pope-like monster, he allegedly has this telepathic ability.
Right.
And then there was a sighting out at White Rock Lake in Dallas. I believe Nick Redford, who's an amazing writer and researcher, I think he uncovered this one first, where this lady said, she was jogging and she felt this overwhelming sense of panic, like she was having an anxiety attack. She looked over to, in some direction and saw this creature. It smiled at her and just appeared in a flash of light and left a sulfuric.
Well, it kind of seems like the Goatman's he's kind of a dick. I mean, if I'm being honest,
Well, you see, it's interesting you mention that, because people say he looks like a satyr or a fawn, and these are mythological creatures.
Right.
The fawn and the satyr are sort of, they have different physical characteristics in folklore. One is the Greek version, one is the Roman version, but they both serve the same sort of the same sort of function in mythology, where they are nature spirits. They're always seen around nature, and they always do sort of jerky things, like you're pointing out, because they're tricksters.
Right.
Like the god Pan or the god Faunus. They're trickster gods.
Right.
The word panic is actually derived from Pan's name, because supposedly if you stumbled upon Pan out in the forest and you disturbed him, you would be overcome with this panic that would cause you to run recklessly over cliffs and into trees and kill yourself, essentially.
Yeah.
And this lady felt like she was having a panic attack, and then she looked over and saw this thing. And so if there's any truth to mythology at all, the behavior of these Goatmen really do sort of sync up with what you read about in Greek and Roman mythology.
Right. So they
are especially
tricksters.
Since these things are, and they're always seen primarily in the United States. They're always seen in places that are makeout spots or parking spots or party spots. And these, like as far as satyrs go, in Greek mythology, they always hung out with the god flying Dionysus, and they were particularly lusty creatures. They always were chasing around female nature spirits called nymphs and even human women. So if these things do exist, it would make sense that they would hang out at a place like this.
Now, do we have any witnesses out there who's, a female who's actually been approached by it? That I think that would be groundbreaking.
I'm trying to think now that you bring it up. I can't recall if there were any female witnesses who came forth. I do know the very first major sighting out in Fort Worth, where the Lake Worth monster was seen in 1969. That thing accosted a group of 4 individuals, 2 couples, who were parked out at the lake, and supposedly it reached through the window and tried to grab one of these men's wives. So I guess, as you pointed out, that is something that's happened. I do know a lot of the witnesses who come forward are male, but there were at least 2 women in that car, and of course the Lake Worth monster. That version of Goatman, he's described as looking like some kind of hairy primate, but with kind of goat-like features and fish scales, actually, like silver kind of scales. Wow. Yeah, it's the oddest of all the descriptions. A lot of the subsequent sightings that were seen, and some of the photographs of this version of the creature are almost undoubtedly pictures of people who were perpetrating a hoax were kind of an albino Bigfoot. It doesn't mean that all the sightings of this albino Bigfoot creature out at Lake Worth were hoaxes, but if you go online and Google the Lake Worth monster and look at these pictures of this white creature, you'll see that it's too good to be true. It definitely looks like a man in a suit just waiting to be photographed.
Okay, yeah.
But
seen a lot of that stuff over the last month or two, just from researching. Yeah.
Well,
an interesting factoid about the Lake Worth monster is some researchers out there actually offered thousands of dollars in rewards for somebody who could step forward years after the fact and prove that they had been a part of the hoax. And I'd say about a half dozen different people at least have came forward out there saying they did this or that with the hoax. But no one stepped forward to claim that money. All they had to do was pass a lie detector test, I believe, and prove that they were the Lake Worth monster. And you would think that as far as a hoax goes, where it's something where I don't think there was even any criminal charges against anyone.
Yeah.
If it was, it'd be very small. Why wouldn't you step forward and claim this reward?
Yeah, why not? I mean,
that's something that's interesting to me.
I've always like the hoaxes that everybody says that everybody they'll just, no matter what it is, it could be Bigfoot, Dogman, the Goatman. They always say that's a hoax. That's a hoax. But like some of these sightings are like deep in the woods or somewhere like off the beaten path. You literally had to know for a fact where that person was going to be, or of something that sort, to just. Are you really going to sit out there for hours just like, there's somebody going to come? I know it. Somebody's going to come.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, some of them, I don't deny the fact that some of these sightings are too good to be true, and some of them have been hoaxes. I mean, as far as again, I'm not saying that the Lake Worth monster was all hoaxes.
Yeah.
But a place like that, especially like places where Goatman is supposedly seen, it's a place where people will be late at night. Because when I was actually researching my book, when I went to one of the locations where Goatman is seen here, Goatman Road in Wascom, Wisconsin, there were a couple of cars parked, and all you could see were their knuckles.
Oh, okay.
so I mean, a lot of these places are still active places with couples, to be away from prying eyes. So I could see how someone would know, hey, let's go prank there.
Yeah.
But I do know of one example here where one of the teachers here in town told me that one of the sightings here, the sighting didn't get written about in my book, but it was one of his students was doing some project and got a little too ambitious and dressed up like Goatman. So these hoaxes do happen.
Yeah.
But they all don't. And the kind of stuff you're talking about are the ones where someone's just traipsing through the middle of the wilderness and they encounter something strange, be it a Goatman or a Bigfoot. And there are some Goatman sightings where, they don't happen in places where there's going to be people. But the more difficult thing about it is, with Goatman, most of the Goatman sightings are seen in the middle of suburbia. And granted, you're going to know that there are going to be people who are around to see you.
Yeah.
There's also going to be people who are going to be around to see you hoaxing.
Right, yeah.
It might be possible to give somebody the slip out for one, you get rid of your costume or whatever you're doing. But some of these things, it's like for instance, the sighting Nick Redfern's documented out at White Rock Lake in Dallas. It was a jogging trail around the lake. White Rock Lake is right outside of Dallas. There's a lot of people go there all the time. And this thing vanished in front of this woman's eyes. So it wasn't very obviously somebody who just dug behind the tree and ditched the costume.
Yeah.
So you do have sightings that defy being hoaxes.
I have a hard time thinking. In my view of suburbia is you can't even mow your lawn without 12 people knowing that you're mowing your lawn. Mm-hmm. So how would someone put together a hoax in the middle of suburbia and get away with it unless they had a lot of neighbors in on it? That to me is kind of strange. Like you said, out in the middle of the woods.
Yeah,
it's easy. It's easy to give somebody the slip. If you're prepared and good at it. But right there in the middle of the open like that.
Yeah,
just to disappear in thin air. That's
There was a sighting here not far from Goatman Road in Kewaskum, which I mentioned earlier, where this gentleman owns a farm, and he got up in the middle of the night to get some snack or something. He's standing by his refrigerator, looks out the window, he sees, well, I believe first he actually heard gunshots, but he lives on a farm in rural Wisconsin, and he thought it was neighbors shooting at coyotes, which is a very common thing. And he looked out his window expecting to see coyotes run past, and what he saw instead was like a 4-foot high-ish, maybe 5-foot high-ish creature running very quickly through very deep snow, and it was on 2 feet and had like a horse-like head, excuse me. And of course, when it's dark and something has like a long snout, was it a horse? Was it a Goatman? Was it something else?
Yeah.
Who knows? But this is very near where people say they see Goatman. This thing jumped over a very large snowbank, as what had previously been running on a snowmobile trail outside his home, and jumped over this incredibly high snowbank and disappeared into the woods. Now that one's a lot harder to explain too, because 4 foot tall, you either have somebody who's very vertically challenged or a child or something, and they're running from gunshots and running very well in deep snow and jumping across big banks of snow.
That'd be a pretty hard one
that's
to fake.
another one was really hard to explain away.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, just hearing all the different, the different folklores, and then weeding through them, to get the actual sightings. You must have had your work cut out for you when you were working on this book. I mean, how many witnesses total did you end up getting to talk to?
Well, the as for weeding out the folklore from the sightings, I did separate the two, but I left them both in the book because I view it as like a two-pronged subject, because you have the stories where, like in Southern California, where he's a failed super soldier experiment by Nazi scientists, which is the real story that they say it's true. And then the Goatman of Bowie, where he's a mutant animal who was like a failed cure for cancer or something. And then they all have axes, and then the Popelic monster. There's like the three that we already mentioned for him. But then you have these other sightings where it's a lot like, your Bigfoot sighting or UFO sighting, where someone sees something, they come forward with it, and here's the information. And a lot of the sightings that are really kind of credible sounding sightings, they occur in locations where I have been unable to find, like a Goatman folktale, like, the super soldier story. So I kind of did a two-prong attack on it. And as for how many people I talked to, I'm going to be honest, there's not a lot of people in the past who came forward with sightings. The folklore greatly outnumbers the sightings. But the sightings that people came forward with are just so incredible. And so, as I mentioned earlier, you have a lot to lose when you say you saw these things. So a lot of the sightings are, they're decades apart. Some took place a couple of centuries ago. Some took place a century ago. Some took place 70 years ago, 30 years ago. A lot of them in the 70s. So it was difficult to track down a lot of the eyewitnesses, but I did talk to maybe close to half a dozen. I haven't worked on that book yet, so I'm having trouble remembering the exact number. But I did talk to about a half dozen contemporary eyewitnesses who had some very interesting stories, and some of them were very Goatman-like. One individual, the individual I interviewed, who was from the Jeffersonville area where, the Popelic monster is supposed to haunt, there in Kentucky, he described a classic Bigfoot sighting, although it did take place. He saw the creature twice. It was an albino Bigfoot-like creature, and both times he saw it hanging around under or climbing on a bridge. Not the Popelic trestle, like in the legend, but near there in that vicinity and hanging around bridges. So some of them corroborate the physical traits of the creature, and others corroborate that something strange seems to live in the area near where these stories occur.
Out of all the ones that you've heard, I mean, is there any that just jump out at you as just, I mean, like as soon as you hear it, are you just on board with it? You know, like the story comes to you and then you read it or talk to the person and you're like, wow. You know, like even if you have to suspend, you know, like a critical mind for a moment, you just believe them or you believe that they believe it. I mean, have you been hit like that by talking to somebody?
I don't think I talked to anyone, at least as far as someone who made it into the book, where I had doubts about their that they believe they saw it. I always approach it as this is something like if I really believe that they believe what they're saying. Like I believe that this person has had a legitimate experience in telling me the story. I always do leave open the fact that maybe it was a misinterpretation of events or something along those lines. And I have had out and out where total BS. I had emails where people, you could tell it was like a 14-year-old kid writing it, putting lots of jokes in it.
Right.
Like, okay, this just gets deleted. But, I mean, as far as all the stories that I've heard, though, where I know it's not just someone who's like, oh, yeah, Bigfoot attacked my buddy in the bar parking lot, which is a real story that I got from some I don't think the kid who wrote it was old enough to drink Judge's Mountain Drink, but like, when it's not something like that, when it is something where here's who I am, you know, here's what happened, here's what happened to the best of my recollection. They all kind of blow my hair back because imagine seeing these things. Whether it's misidentification or not. I mean, because someone asked me once, you know, what would I do if I saw Goatman? Or I believe that actually the question was, do I believe in Goatman? And my go-to answer to that is that I'd have to see it to believe it, but the whole 100% that it's not, you know, maybe an all misidentification. But if I did see it, I don't know what I would do if I saw it, because seeing it would be a life-changing, reality-altering thing, because you're like, okay, this exists, so what else exists? What's going on? What is this? What did I just see?
Like, so many doors would just open for that, like, because now you're like, your brain is like, now you're going to go home and like, okay, what else did I see? Like, because there's sometimes like you're like going down the road, like especially when you're like, because you like, how long have you been in like the paranormal and just like looking for these unexplained things? Like for how long you've been into it, you probably have seen something that kind of made you like question something, but then actually seeing something down the road, you're like, that could have been real too.
Yeah.
So that's it plays a lot of tricks on your mind too.
I mean, I've been interested in this stuff as like just in what's the right, an enthusiast would be the right word. When I was very young, my family, you know, were not shy about talking about strange phenomena around me, whether they believed it or not. It depended on what day it was. But and then I've been researching like as professional as you can research this sort of thing. There's not a real diploma you can get for a lot of this stuff. So I've been researching it and investigating it since 2011. I don't want to say professionally, but you know, that's when I start referring to myself as a researcher and investigator instead of an enthusiast.
You know, and it's interesting. I myself years ago used to go out and do investigations just privately for friends of friends and things like that, and it was always because I was interested, and there were strange things that did happen, and everything kind of culminated to one single event where there was something very, very strange had happened to me. I haven't yet talked about it on the podcast, but my daughter, who was very interested in the paranormal, actually asked me, she goes, what's it like to go out there and investigate this stuff? And I described it to her that after you get done, you pay attention to shadows that move a lot more than you do beforehand. It really changes your perspective. You know, you start noticing the negative space.
Yeah, you start looking at everything critically and trying to just figure out why it's happening.
Yeah.
And all that. And the reason I even mentioned that I'd been doing investigations and research is because I do want to point out that I think Goatman is a possibility. I can't say 100% that he's real because, like I said, I haven't experienced it myself. But I do believe in supernatural because I have had experiences with ghosts and things of that nature where
Absolutely.
I saw, and interestingly enough, these experiences didn't occur to me when I was on an investigation. Well, I saw a woman's face floating in the air. I was just walking through a nature trail and actually in Kentucky at Mammoth Cave National Park. And
okay.
It's that kind of thing where we're talking about what would it be like to see Goatman. Well, it really shook me because I'm like, I just saw that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now what? You know, it's never left me. I can close my eyes. I can tell you exactly what this woman's face looked like to this day. It wasn't a face of anyone who was familiar to me. But I feel like I know her now because her face is plain in my head as my mother's.
You'll never be able to forget it now. Yeah.
So I do believe that when people say, I saw Goatman standing by a pond and there was a flash of light and I smelled sulfur and he disappeared.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe you did see that. Can we prove it?
Right, yeah.
That particular instance, we can't. But these sightings still need to be looked into. They need to be documented.
Absolutely.
There needs to be some literature out there to keep track of this sort of stuff.
An archive.
So,
yeah.
I noticed years ago when I was doing research, this was back for anybody who listens to this podcast. We used to use film for our cameras, and the film went into the camera, and then your picture went onto the film. And I had 3 cameras that I would switch off with when I went to places, and for a good 2 years, I had the same dark, shadowy apparition appearing over a span of 39 pictures. And I got to the point where I kept switching cameras because I'm like, okay, it's something wrong with the camera. So I switched out cameras, and I get to a different one, and I go to a different place, and it all happened. It started up here at the Beverly Hills Club. If you're familiar with that, it's a club that burnt down years ago. A lot of people tragically perished in it, and it's a very, very active site. I'm not condoning anyone to go there without permission. We had permission at the time. All I'm saying is it's really active, and if it doesn't make your hair stand up, I don't know what will.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone to places that are really, really haunted, and nothing happened. I've spent all night investigating places where, you take pictures and talking to mics and you get no evidence, no personal experiences. But then it's the damnedest thing where, like, me and my wife was with me. It wasn't an actual investigation we had been on, but we went to Mammoth Cave because we heard it was supposed to be haunted. People said they saw this spectral family of African Americans who might be, some of the old guides from the cave, on these big 100-person tour groups. Yeah. And we went on this tour group, saw nothing, and then we decided to get in a quick hike before dark, and just as twilight's about to hit, we're walking along on this, I think it was the Cedar Sink Trail, I think is the name of it, at Mammoth Cave Park, and I saw that face. And we weren't looking for it at that time. My mind wasn't programmed. Like, okay, we're going to see a ghost. I'm in a dark place. And they said they see ghosts here. Right. I had already put that out of my mind. We were now looking at trees. And I was actually, when I saw the thing, there was this nice, it was early fall, late summer. This nice cool breeze was coming through the trees. It was getting to be twilight, still a lot of light, but the light getting softer. I'm looking down at these plants. My wife's like, I wonder what kind of plants those are. I don't know what kind of plant anything is, so I have no idea. And she's walking on, And I'm just kind of sitting there standing there, enjoying the breeze and staring at these plants as they rustle. And that woman's face appeared. She didn't blink. She didn't. It was like somebody
Wow.
cut someone's face out of an old sepia tone antique photograph.
Yeah.
Put it right in front of my face.
And there she is.
Then I saw it for like 2 seconds, maybe at max. And I actually, like, my brain couldn't register what I was seeing. It was like, okay, that happened. So I just turned my head and started to try to catch up to my wife. And all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute. A woman's face appeared 8 foot from me in front of some plants. And I turned back around, nothing there, and it shook my world. And I wasn't even looking for it. All I did was kind of just let my mind go free, unfocus my eyes. And this wasn't like one of those seeing out pictures where you relax your eyes and you see a sailboat. This is as real as, my wife's face had been a second ago. But it was like, had this strange sepia tone to it. It was just like, here this is, like it was from, I don't want to say another dimension, but out of time or something, and then it was gone just as quick. Like,
that other place between the spaces.
Did I actually get a glimpse of someone who had been there, in the 1900s?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Incredible.
It wasn't something I could interact with. I know that because it didn't seem intelligent. It was just like a vision, and it was gone. And
wow.
I don't claim to be psychic or anything along those lines. So I have no way to explain what I saw.
That's crazy, man. I've heard a lot of things about Mammoth Cave, and there's actually a lot of the cryptozoology part. Like, they say that there's Sasquatches around that area too. I had a weird story that I saw a while back ago that they said that an old there was a town over that found they used it as a bomb shelter because for a nuclear fallout, and they got trapped in there. And they were talking about hills have eyes kind of people there. It's crazy. But some people said that it was just a ruse. Somebody just made the story online. But it's still that's kind of crazy because Mammoth Cave is really big. So you never know.
I mean, it's enormous, and there's parts of it that, I mean, we only went down through a little portion of it because there's various versions of the tour. And I mean, it's a legitimate fact that the natives used to go in there years before, European settlers ever came and left, the bodies of their loved ones there to mummify, and those bodies had been desecrated. And then there was that failed tuberculosis hospital that was built in Mammoth Cave where tourists, because it was one of America's first ever tourist attractions. We're talking I don't want to say the date because I know I'll get it wrong, but back before there were you would think there were tourists, and they just walked up and found dead bodies from these poor tuberculosis patients laying on the rocks because they didn't survive, oddly enough, living in a cave. And supposedly, the spirits of the slaves who were guides there are seen because there used to be an African American church inside that cave. And then, as far as cryptozoology goes at Mammoth Cave, that trail we walked on, we kept going after I saw that face. And we got down there to actually see, where the water goes into the earth and forms the cave. Yeah. And it looked like something in the Lord of the Rings. It was just like beautiful. A fantasy land. It was so beautiful. It was I didn't think something like that existed. Not very far from where I live. I mean, I'm hours from Kentucky normally, but it was like I stepped in the Middle Earth.
Yeah.
So,
it's wonderful.
I mean, I could definitely see some strange creature living there. I mean, we actually almost stumbled onto a bear on our way back.
Dang.
So I'd seen the ghost face. We had walked and saw this incredible formation. And we're walking back, and this crazy old man comes running up to us, and he's like, "Did you see my poodle go by here?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't see the poodle." He's like, "Well, she's chasing the bear." And I'm like, this guy's just, this guy's lost his mind. He's trying to scare us, a poodle chasing a bear. And his granddaughter or his daughter was with him, and she kind of rolled her eyes like, can you believe him? And so we walk on 100 feet, and there in the trail, huge fresh bear print. I'm like, that guy was telling the truth.
God damn. You had like a very awesome, like,
that's a memorable trip.
Yeah, that was a memorable trip there. Like, you probably had the best tour there.
You know, I'm kind of jealous. My third grade trip to Mammoth Cave kind of sucked a little bit in comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, we went into the cave,
I wasn't
and
really
that's
that
it.
impressed with the cave tour. I mean, it's an amazing cave. I was impressed with the cave.
Yeah.
But there were so many people on the tour because so many people want to see it. It was so packed and ambiance to it. But what happened after that, when I'm just out wandering around through the national park, I'll never forget.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that people need to go see whenever these national parks are open again. I don't know if any of them are open right now with the pandemic, but definitely pencil in some time to go to Mammoth Cave at some point in your life.
So Nathan, I got a question for you. Is there any Goatman related locations, or you know what, just in general, paranormal or just cryptozoid locations that you've heard about that you haven't got a chance to get to yet? And would any of them stand out enough to make it on a bucket list? Is there anything out there that's just calling to you?
There's so many. I mean, I'm not one of the Bigfooters. I don't profess to have any extensive knowledge of those, but I'd love to go out to the Pacific Northwest. And I don't think I have it in me to actually wander into the wilderness out there, because it is actual wilderness.
Yeah.
But I do want to at least do the touristy stuff that's safe for someone like me who doesn't have any survival skills to go. You know, like, I'm a big fan of the film Willow Creek, and I don't want to go into the woods there just in case, you know, the Sasquatch do drag me away. I want to go hear the folk songs, and eat the Bigfoot burger and all that sort of stuff. The touristy aspect of that. And this isn't really a sighting, but I definitely want to get out to Lauren Coleman's International Cryptozoology Museum in Maine. And Maine has such rich paranormal folklore. I'm sure there's a million things I could do out there.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
I'd like to get to, you know, these are kind of cliche, but I'd like to go see Loch Ness. I'd like to,
that would be awesome. Yeah, that would be
see
really
if
great.
Nessie shows up, you know,
Heck
or any of that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean,
just hearing about your...
If given enough time, I'm sure I could think of dozens of places. Those are the ones that spring to mind right now. I mean, every time I read about a phenomenon or a creature, I'm like, oh, Loveland, Ohio's not that far. Let's go look let's go look for that thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or, you know, let's go look for Bat Squatch. I think that's in the Pacific Northwest also somewhere, like Washington or Portland.
I haven't even begun to dig into that one yet.
Yeah, like, let's go see that. Or I did finally get one off my bucket list, though. I wanted to go to Point Pleasant because the Mothman fascinates me.
Yes, sir.
And I didn't get to do any research there because it was this thing where I was visiting friends on a tight schedule, and I got to dip down to Point Pleasant.
Yep.
So I got my picture next to the giant Mothman statue and bought the book and everything else. And
Heck yeah.
I drove across the Silver Bridge, and it didn't collapse, luckily. But I'd like to get back and do some more. I'd like to actually visit the actual TNT area where the first sighting occurred. And do some legitimate research there. I'd like to do something more there than be a tourist.
That is definitely a can of worms that we're hoping to open here on the podcast eventually.
Oh yeah,
you know,
definitely.
Really excited for that one.
I kind of wanted to jump back real quick. Like you said that you've actually been to some of these, the people that you interview for your book. Have you ever been to any other ones that kind of like, I guess, it just made you feel uneasy? Like it was more than the other ones. Like it just seemed like there was something going on around here, but you really didn't see much.
You mean like places that I've investigated?
Yeah, places
like
that
the location.
Yeah, you've been at the location. Have you been to most of the places that you encounters that you've heard of?
Well, a lot of my investigations, I haven't done a lot of investigations at places where cryptozoological creatures have been sighted because, like I said, with Goatman, well, actually, I did visit several public locations and several places here in Wisconsin. But, like, as I said earlier, with Goatman, a lot of those things happen in suburbia. It's like, how do you investigate that? Like, a lot of these sightings happen. And, I actually did visit Bowie, Maryland, and where those sightings occurred, like, it used to be roads, and now it's like suburbs and strip malls. Like I went to one place where a very famous sighting happened, and it was a strip mall. You can't really investigate that.
Yeah, he's just chilling out on the strip mall. Like,
yeah, and like I drove by, I'm like, look, there's where it happened.
He,
And
like,
there's
gives
like
you-
there's like an empty blockbuster there now or something. But most of the places I've investigated have been in southeast Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
They've been places that have ghost activity.
Yeah.
I don't get a lot of calls to investigate places where people have seen like a cryptozoological creature, because a lot of the stories are, I was driving down the road and this thing walked out in front of me, and then I'll go drive down that road, but usually it walked out from private property, and you can't really investigate.
Yeah.
So,
Right,
but I've done a lot of like ghost investigations, and the very first investigation I went on, like an actual investigation and not like a tourist trip, I got this really sick feeling in this one spot where I saw a shadow creature. And I actually got an EVP that night, where we were down in the basement, and a walkie-talkie with no batteries had started talking, and they heard this voice speaking in German. And this just took place after they inherited their grandfather's old World War II uniform. So we were down in the basement, and they're guiding us around. And you guys, it sounds like you guys have done some investigations. You know that when you talk during an EVP session, you're supposed to mention in the recording if you cough or sneeze or say something. That way, when you listen to it 3 weeks later, you know it was you and not a ghost.
Right, yeah.
And so my co-investigator, Mike, he was talking and talking and talking to the client, and I was getting irritated. I said, that's Mike talking again, and he's clear across the room, you know. So all of it, and then nothing happened, you know, that night, other than I got sick upstairs later when, you know, inexplicably. And I'm listening to the EVP like 2 minutes later, and after I say that's Mike talking again, you know, you hear Mike and the other person who's in the room with us talking, and then over top of them you hear somebody go, shh. So I'm like, I called Mike up and played it for him. Like, even the ghost thinks you were annoying people. Listen to that. But yeah, so that's one. And then this was again something I did as a tourist, because it was originally going to be an investigation, but other people in my group, the Paranormal Investigation Research Society, they ended up having to cancel. And we were coming to Kentucky. Again, most of my best stories are about Kentucky, and I've been there like 3-4 times. But,
hey, what can we say, man?
I went down, Kentucky's great. I got to get back. And then we were at Waverly Hills Sanitarium, probably you guys' most famous haunting.
Waverly Hills Sanitarium.
Like I said, it was, and like I said, it was supposed to be an investigation, but it cost a lot of money, and I wasn't, going to be able to put it all in. And we were going to split like 6 ways or something.
Yeah. And
it's just too big a place for one person to walk around with some equipment and investigate properly. You need a team for it. It's like 2 football fields or something.
That place is one big can of worms, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so we went there, and I got to see it while I'm there, And this was like the day after or is it the day after or the day before I had my experience at Mammoth Cave, but I don't remember the chronology of events. But we went there, me and my wife, just as tourists, on the ghost tour, night tour.
Yeah.
And walking around, we're, being told all the stories and shown all the places. And again, I got really sick there, and it was in this room. It was when they take you away. For people who don't know, it was originally thought that fresh air was good for tuberculosis patients. That's why it's an open-air hospital, and they would put the patients that they hoped would recover in front of these massive windows to get all this fresh air. And then when they lost hope for you, they moved you into the back of the hospital because they kind of gave up on you.
Yeah.
And we were in one of those rooms, and I believe it was the room of Lois Higgs, who's a very famous young woman who, she's famous for dying tragically and dying young there of tuberculosis. She's been attributed to some phenomena on several shows, maybe Ghost Adventures or one of those shows. And I got really sick when I was standing there. And then later the next day, the next morning, I get out of the shower. We left Waverly Hills. It was late. We just got in off the road. Just fell out of sleep. So I get up the next day. I take a shower. I'm walking out of the the bathroom, toweling off, and my wife's like, "Oh my God, what happened to your shoulder?" And I have all these scratch marks on my shoulder, and it was something that I read, and I think it was Weird Kentucky. I was reading it on the trip down. That one of the writer of that book, it had happened to them when they were at Waverly Hills. So I'm like, oh my God, it happened to me. And I don't think Lois Higgs would have done that because she's a nice spirit, from what I've been told. But there's some really negative things there.
It's
so
strange
that's
how...
the kind of place where I didn't capture any evidence. I saw things, felt things, had things happen to me as far as like scratches.
Yeah.
But I can't show someone a picture like, here's the ghost that scratched me. So that's a place where I know something is going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm always skeptical of these haunts where, give us $300, you can investigate. But I think Waverly Hills is legitimate.
Yeah, I was gonna add to what you said there. Waverly is where I received my scratches years ago.
Oh, really?
So
I guess we're in the same club.
I think we're scratch bros now. I think we've got that's kind of a weird that's a little bit of a weird coincidence, huh? I've had scratches on 3 different occasions, and none of them.
I never get scratched, and the fact that it happened there, we're at a place where it's supposed to happen, and I felt ill, and just like, I'm like, I don't, like I said, I'm not psychic or anything. I don't profess to be.
Yeah.
But when something like that happens, it makes you take notice. I mean, there's a chance maybe something else happened to my shoulder on the way down, maybe a scrape on my backpack or something, but it sure looks like scratches. And, if people are interested, that article's up on, I believe, if you just Google cultofweird.com and go and type Waverly Hills in your Google search. That'll pop right up. It's actually gets a lot of traffic on that site because there's a photograph of some evidence there, and that's something that's not as common as it should be for these types of phenomena. So,
yeah, it is interesting. I received scratches down the front of my chest, and after investigating Bobby Mackey's, which I'm sure you're familiar with that name. And then,
that's on that's a place that has to be on season 1 of any paranormal show that's ever been broadcast.
It's become a go-to, and I was investigating it with my old team that I used to run with, and it was before it really blew up.
Yeah,
and we'd heard some stories. We'd heard the black dog stories in there. There was a couple little weird things that had happened. One I'm not so sure about. When I think back of it, I'm like, I'm almost sure I handed a cigarette to someone who wasn't there. And then on another occasion, as I was going into the basement with my team, I didn't bump into anything. I wasn't the guy that was climbing into stuff. We had another guy that would do that. He would climb down into the basement, into the well, and climbing over stuff. That wasn't me. I was patient. I was looking for details. I was calculating. And yet when we get out of there, the next day I wake up and I've got scratches down the front of my chest. And I'm like, I wasn't drinking. I wasn't doing anything. I wanted to have a clear mind. I wanted to be very conscious of my movements and the things I did. How the hell did this happen? And that messed with me. Yeah. For a while. And it's
I mean, when something happens to you physically, I mean, feeling a little nauseous or anxious or something is one thing.
Yeah.
But then when you're like, oh, did something actually assault me? That it gives you a whole other sort of
it's wild
outlook on it. Yeah, I mean 99.9% or even a greater percentage than that of the places I've investigated that have like ghosts and hauntings attributed to them. Nothing happens, or when it does happen, it's nothing threatening. It's just creepy or unusual.
It's unsettling.
Because, like I said, that's the only time I've been scratched. But when something like that does happen, I'm like, oh, okay, there's a new side of this.
It's wild. I walked outside. We were halfway through the night at Bobby Mackey's. People were actually, there was a big group upstairs in the place doing their thing. We were allowed to just kind of do what we wanted throughout the lower levels of the place. And at one point, I was like, man, I got to get out of here for a minute. I was like, I'll be back in a few. I'm gonna just step out and have a smoke and just I'm gonna clear my head, get some fresh air. It's a dingy basement. For anybody out there that's ever been in it, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's your atypical basement that's been unkempt for a long time. So I walk outside.
Yeah, I've done a lot of investigation in bar basements. Yeah. They're all gross.
I went outside and I kind of went around the building, away from the parking lot. I was trying to get away from people, and I kind of stood at the corner next to the road, and I just kind of lit a cigarette, and a man is just standing there, and he says, "Hey, can I get one of those?" And I'm sure, here you go. And then I start talking, thinking that I'm just kind of passively conversating with this guy, I'm like, oh yeah, we're kind of messing around in the basement, taking pictures and things. I turn to look, and there's just no one there. And I'm like, where the hell did he go? And I went looking for him. I actually walked down over the hill towards the other side of the building, and I thought, well, this dude just took off. He just took off running or something, And I'm like, I didn't hear nothing, and he was this close. So I don't know what happened there.
Yeah.
But, man, it was weird. It was really weird.
I've had that sort of thing kind of happen to me, not investigating, but I have a bad habit of looking in my rearview mirror a lot, especially when, there's cars behind me who are tailgating me.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of times where, I'm staring at these guys. I'm like, get off my rear end. Why are you guys back there? And, why are you in such a hurry? Why don't you go around? Then you look down 1 second just to,
and they're gone.
Check your speedometer, and you look back up, and they're not there. It's like, was there even a road they could turn on? It's very unsettling.
Yeah.
There's been a time or two where I'm convinced that, maybe that wasn't really a car.
Yeah.
Where'd it go? When somebody's there that they're not, you can't rationalize it. That's really kind of shakes you up.
Well. Okay, well, we're going to kind of wrap it up right here, but we have a couple ending questions here for you, so I kind of wanted to, in your belief, we kind of went over through the whole Goatman and the paranormal side of it, and, supernatural. So in your thing, in your kind of words and your belief, if it's real, if you ever found that proof, do you feel like it's not a cryptozoology, it's not a lost time, animal and time? Are you leaning more to the supernatural side, like the spiritual, entity? Would you say that?
Well, I think that if it ever is found to be proven somehow to be real, then it's going to open up a big can of worms, because it's going to be I don't think it's a demon. I don't think it's satanic like in a lot of these stories. I think because these sort of sightings, they happen in Europe. It's like, oh yeah, so and so saw a satyr down by the old Roman road, which is I do document some European satyr sightings at the start of Goatman, and I think that it is definitely going to be something from mythology, maybe not necessarily, some sort of nature spirit, but definitely something that would be in the context of the supernatural, something that would have to reclassify the way we view the world. Like, okay, maybe these satyrs are real. Maybe they do wander in and out from some other, I don't know if dimension is the right word, but maybe they can make themselves known to us in fleeting ways, and maybe we just see them on accident, or maybe they are messing with us. But I think if something, it'll be something like that. I don't know how, given what science is at the moment, how you could ever prove that to be true. But again, Goatman doesn't exist in the fossil record. It's a zoological impossibility. Yeah. These things exhibit human intelligence, and sometimes they speak English, or they have telepathy, or they vanish. It's definitely going to be something paranormal.
Yeah.
So if it ever is proven somehow to exist, it'd be like saying, okay, we proved ghosts are real. It would be groundbreaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Nathan, I have a two-part question here that's coming from I'm a fan of yours, and I hope this doesn't offend you in any way. Is there any chance of an audiobook version of your books?
If I could figure out how to do that, because the book is as self-published, because I'm a very impatient person. But if I could figure out how to do that properly and to have someone myself read it, that would definitely be something I wanted to have happen, because I don't like my voice at all. I rarely ever listen to these podcasts I'm on just because I hear my voice and I cringe. It's probably not as bad as it sounds to me to other people, but I hate it. So if I could find someone who had that nice professional, audiobook voice, if I could afford James Earl Jones, or Morgan Freeman to read it,
I guess Denny's out of the question.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, like, hey, if there's tryouts, I want in. I want to try.
The thing is, too, I don't know how well the entire book would sound read aloud, because it's. I mean, I try to make it a book that tells a story and leads you from one chapter to the next.
Yeah.
But then a lot of it there's a lot of source citing. There's a lot of facts and places and dates and names of periodicals. I don't know how well it would sound to have the whole thing read out loud to you. But I'm definitely not opposed to the idea of it.
If I can, I'll set up a recorder and I'll read a chapter and I'll send it to you, and then you can tell me, like, hey, this sucks, or hey, we might have something here. Yeah. But the other part of the question is,
audiobooks are very popular. It'd probably helpful to get a lot of people who normally wouldn't read it exposed to the material.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
definitely.
It's definitely something I've considered from time to time.
But is there any new books on the horizon, and can we have a hint if there is?
I have several books right now that I start and then abandon for various reasons.
Yeah.
I'm working on a book about circus and clown-themed hauntings and unexplained sightings and folklore. That's one that I don't know why I keep getting distracted from it, because when I sit down and I write a chapter, I'm in love with it, and then it takes me a while to get back in the right frame to do the research and do the writing. I've also was trying to do another book similar to Goatman, and I've completed a couple of chapters to that, 2 chapters to that. That's sort of stalled out. In the meanwhile, I've been writing about things that aren't really supernatural. I've been writing a lot of articles for Scary Monster magazine, which is a classic horror film magazine.
Outstanding.
Although a couple of those articles were actually paranormal, and I was thinking about it.
Awesome.
But
cool.
One is like about folklore from when I was, living in Northeast Georgia as a teen and a child, and then another article was an excerpt about the Poplick monster taken from Goatman and slightly updated and rewritten.
Okay.
So if people want to read a newer edition of that Poplick monster not article, but chapter from the Goatman book, you can obtain an issue of Scary Monsters that has it. I don't know the issue number right now, but it was an issue from 2019. So, that's a good way to get some new Goatman content.
Heck yeah. And what advice would you give to anyone who's had an experience? And if they're out there right now and they're listening to this and they say to themselves, "Wow, I've seen this thing." What advice could you give them?
I want to tell them to come forward, but I also want to tell them to be aware of what will happen when you do come forward. I mean, odds are you'll tell a story to someone like me, 500 people will read it, and that'll be the end of it. But there's always that chance that something you say, that the sighting will become famous. Some producer, because television producers scour the internet for people who say they have these sightings, and they contact these people because they need content for their shows. Paranormal shows there's a whole, basically the Travel Channel is just paranormal now. So they need eyewitnesses. But sometimes when you come forward, you will get a lot of attention. I'm not going to say anything negative is going to become of it,
Right.
but it's a very common thing for people who do come forward. They get a lot of attention and they just shrink away because they're tired of dealing with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I mean, I definitely want to tell people to come forward, though, because I want to know this stuff. Us researchers want to document it.
Yeah.
It's important. If any of this stuff is ever going to get proven, there needs to be that body of recorded evidence, whether it be some television show or in a book or a podcast.
It's the only way we're ever going to make a science of it.
Yeah.
I mean, right now it's probably the safest it's ever been to come forward with one of these stories, because it is such a pop culture phenomenon right now. All the ghost and cryptozoology shows and UFO shows are so popular. I think right now is the time when you're going to get the least strange looks coming forward. So, definitely I want to encourage people to come forward, because, I mean, to me, if something like I saw that face on that trail at Mammoth Cave, and I could, for me, it was too incredible to not tell people.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of people out there when they see this, like they need to tell someone. There's that need.
I can speak from the other side of it, where I've had an extremely startling experience, and for years I didn't say anything, and I didn't come out, and it doesn't change anything by keeping it a secret either. It doesn't really go away. It doesn't get easier to remember. If anything, it just makes you question yourself and question what did I make this up? Did this really happen to me? What is going on? It causes a big conflict also. So we even encourage people who want to, tell us their story to even just email it to us anonymously, and we'll read it, and we'll just go from there. Just to get an archive.
Definitely. I mean, and anonymity is also definitely a way to go. The only problem with that is when skeptics read it, they're like, okay, well, this guy just made it up and said anonymous.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the only drawback to that, but I would rather get an anonymous story. I mean, because when someone comes to me with a story, and I always ask them before I write a blog or put in an article or a book, like, do you want to remain anonymous? It's definitely, I get wanting to share and also not wanting to have, people show up at your doorstep. Because I'm sure that's happened where writers just show up unannounced at some famous eyewitness's door. So I get that. It's definitely an option to go. Get that information out there, please.
Well, Nathan, I thank you for joining us on this episode. I would like to kind of extend an olive branch here, and would love to have you back on, because it seems like you not only your research on the Goatman is awesome, but you have a lot of paranormal experiences that I definitely would like on other episodes. Thanks for being on the podcast.
And we're really big fans of yours, and
thank you,
man. Just knowing you're out there doing what you're doing, man, it's awesome. And I'm totally gonna encourage every other fan I meet of yours to absolutely bug you about the next book.
Yes.
And I can't wait to see whatever you come up with.
Buy some back issues of Scary Monsters magazine, because those guys are small press. They definitely need the help. So,
all right, Scary Monsters
thank
magazine.
you for all the kind words, and I would love to be back on. That'd be great.
Oh man, thank you so much. And when this one's launched and it's out there, we'll shoot you a message and say if you decide you do want to hear it, and you'll have it, and whatever you decide will be great with us. And man,
I always link to them on my website in the hopes that other people will enjoy them. I just don't have the gumption to hear them myself. So.
I understand.
Yeah, I get you.
We totally appreciate it, man. This has been a true pleasure.
Yeah, just if you have any other things that you would like to plug for us to just put on the description of this podcast, just kind of leave me a message, and I'll put them on there, man.
Absolutely.
Oh, sure thing. And Goatman Flesh or Folklore is available at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, all over the internet. So all my books are there. Scary Monsters, magazine's available at, I think it's mymoviemonsters.com. I'm sure if you Google Scary Monsters, it'll come up. But, yeah, so, yeah, all right, thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, man, we appreciate it, and take it easy and be safe out there.
All right, thank you. Have a nice night.
You too.
You too, man.
Yeah.
Tyler.
Denny, that was an awesome.
That was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing to get to talk to him after checking out the book, hearing all about him, seeing him on television.
Yep.
You know, wow. I mean, I'm literally sitting here across
so
from you right now, and I can't get the smile off my face.
Yeah, I know.
This is amazing.
I just like the second author on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Like, I feel like I dropped the ball on the first author. I didn't do my research.
David was just so articulate that I felt like I wasn't intelligent enough to speak to the man.
Yeah.
Wow, you know, and Nathan, oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm so blown away. And you know what's interesting? I know I'm kind of fangirling a little bit here, and I can't help it. Is that, you know, this is a guy whose research is out there, who, I mean, personally, like, I've ran across his research many times now, just, you know, on our continuous search for answers here, and to get to talk to the man. You know, I know other podcasters are doing this longer and they've done it more, and it's not as big a deal, but for me, I'm still on that fan side, so I'm still really excited, and I'm totally gonna read a chapter of his book and send it to him. And
I think you should. Like your voice is like, I want to say, like, don't take this wrong.
Okay.
James Earl Jones.
Yeah.
Like Denny.
That's close.
Like, you're like between.
Okay,
like, I think, like, if you want to say it, it's like James Earl Jones.
For folks at home, he's got me about 9 inches below James Earl Jones on the, you know, like, how high up scale, and that's good enough for me.
Like Morgan Freeman, I would say he's a little bit above you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Morgan Freeman. That's crazy.
But I think you should.
Guys at home, if you're listening, these stories are important. They need to be told. They need to be passed down and archived because, like I said earlier, there's no way for us to make a science of this without an archive. We must make an archive so that we can find patterns.
We need to turn the unexplained into explained.
Yeah, that's the mission.
That is the mission.
I think we've literally joined Nathan's team by doing this. We're part of this world now, and we're diving in. I've been a part of this world before, and I got out of it because something happened.
Yeah.
And possibly sometime in this first season, I may, you know, if you're willing, get you over here and let's turn the mics on, and I'll just tell the story, and let's put it out there. And this will be the first time that I've ever told the story to someone who wasn't, you know,
there,
immediately close friend or family.
Oh yeah.
You know, it took me 20 years to tell 5 people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I understand. Like, I'm always like, I feel like I joined this podcast knowing that I was a skeptic. Yeah. I don't know a lot of this stuff. I have not had big experiences. Yeah. I think I've saw stuff, but like you were saying beforehand, like you don't know. Like when you see that stuff, you have to question yourself. Are you going to say like most rational people would say like, I just was seeing stuff or whatnot, like any of that sort. So you just, because you don't want to sit there and start like, because you're the most to yourself, you're the biggest critic.
Absolutely.
And you're going to freaking like, you're going to cut yourself down because you're thinking of what other people are going to say.
Exactly.
So this is a way, like, everybody needs to get it off their chest, because no matter what, if it's a big experience, it's going to like keep with you for the rest of your life, because you're not going to look at the world the same after those kinds of experiences.
Exactly.
So like, I think you should, like, I am on board, man. I think you should tell everybody your story, and maybe like all of our other listeners that have been on this podcast that will give their stories. We can probably link you with somebody that has the same experience.
And that would be wonderful.
That'd be awesome.
Just to be able to talk to someone else who had a similar experience to mine would be fantastic. It would be, I mean, that's gold.
Yeah, that's gold.
That's I don't know what else to say about it.
It's peace of mind, because you know that I really...
Can you start that sentence over? Peace of mind.
Yeah, it's peace of mind because, come on, like when you actually find somebody that has the same experience as you, you kind of like sit back and you're like, okay, you can take a deep breath.
There's
I'm not.
two parts of it though. The first part is hearing it, and then you're like, it gets you. It shocks you. It's almost like the first thing that happened to you replays while you're hearing someone else say it.
Yeah.
And then after that, then you can begin to kind of, okay, so I'm not crazy.
Yeah,
I did experience this because this person is describing it exactly to me. Which brings me to you, listeners. If you have a story, something's happened to you, don't be afraid. Send us your story. If you need to do it anonymously, that's fine. But tell us your story. Encounters at kyxfiles.com. Don't hesitate. Get it off your chest. And again, if you want to be anonymous, totally fine with us.
You can still come on the podcast. We can mask your voice.
We can mask your voice. We don't even hide your name.
We don't have to tell the name.
Yep.
Or anything. But at least, like, I feel like I will strongly say, kind of like what Nathan was saying, when you do a story that's just sent as anonymous, a lot of people would say, "Hey, it's made up." But at least somebody that comes on the podcast can keep their name out,
sure,
mask their voice.
Absolutely.
But at least they're the listeners are hearing somebody tell this story. They can hear the genuine, I hate to say this, but the distress in their voice when they're telling the story. They're seeing motions come out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I think that will give weight to their story. No matter if no one knows their name, they're at least giving the weight of those words, of that encounter.
Yeah.
So, like he just said, send us your stories. I hope that you can build up some courage and come on the podcast with us. Join this journey with us.
Join this team, man.
Join this team.
We're going to figure this out. We're going to get you through this. And if we can't get you through this, we're going to find someone else who can. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it. Everybody who subscribed, followed, everything you've done.
Thank you.
You've followed us on Spotify. You've subscribed to us on iTunes. You subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you so much.
You're making
all the encouragement on the Facebook groups we found. Very, very awesome. Everybody who's been helping us so far, we really appreciate it. Somehow, I think we're going to be okay, and we're gonna keep going forward.
Yeah, you guys are making it bigger than we ever kind of thought that it would be right now.
I'm blown away.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you, guys. I know we say that every podcast, but every episode.
We mean it.
But we definitely mean it.
We mean it. We're not professionals, but we might be one day. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
We'll see. Hopefully, you guys stick with us and keep going, and somehow we'll try to make this bigger than it is. I don't know, but it's about that time to tuck you in. So, listener, you heard the story, the description. The man who is part goat, maybe not even from this world. When you go out walking in the woods, did you see something? Did you hear something? Or did you imagine it? Somehow I don't think you imagined. Neither did I.